She thought it was just coffee, kindness, and maybe a chance to catch her breath. But for him, it was the first real smile he'd had in years. Day after day, he returned. The diner filled with whispers. The town began to judge. Suddenly, secrets from the past collide with the future of a child. A custody battle looms. Gossip turns cruel. And a broken man must decide if love and family are worth losing everything else. Can a single smile change not just one life, but an entire town? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the worn linoleum floor of Mabel's diner. Steam rose from the coffee maker behind the counter, mixing with the sweet scent of maple syrup and fresh bacon. The familiar clinking of plates and murmured conversations filled the cozy space like a well-worn melody. Josie Rivera balanced 3 plates along her left arm with practiced ease. Her white apron had a small coffee stain from her rushed breakfast with Maya and Noah before school drop-off, but her smile remained bright and genuine. She delivered scrambled eggs to Mr. Peterson, pancakes to Mrs. Wilson, and a Western omelet to Coach Thompson, all while keeping track of refills and new customers entering the diner. The bell above the door chimed softly. Josie glanced up, her practiced eye taking in the newest arrival. He stood out immediately, not just because she'd never seen him before, but because everything about him seemed to belong in a glossy magazine rather than their small-town diner. His charcoal suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months, and his leather briefcase gleamed in the morning light, but it was his eyes that caught her attention. Dark circles shadowed them, and despite his perfect posture and expensive clothes, those eyes held an ocean of sadness. The stranger chose the corner booth. Number 7, the one with the slightly wobbly table that Josie had learned to stabilize with a folded napkin. He moved with deliberate precision, as if every gesture required careful thought. "I'll be right with you," Josie called out, her voice warm and welcoming. She quickly delivered fresh coffee to the retired veterans who gathered every morning at the counter, pausing briefly to hear Walt's latest joke about his new knee. Behind the counter, Mabel caught her eye. "New face," the older woman murmured, nodding toward booth 7 while wiping her hands on her apron. "Looks like he's carrying the weight of the world." Josie grabbed a fresh menu and her coffee pot. As she approached the booth, she noticed how the stranger stared out the window, his fingers absently turning his heavy silver watch around his wrist. The morning light caught his wedding ring, but something in his demeanor spoke of loss rather than connection. "Good morning. Welcome to Mabel's," Josie said, sliding a menu in front of him. "Coffee to start?" He nodded without looking up. "Black, please." His voice was quiet but cultured, with the kind of accent that spoke of Ivy League schools and boardrooms. Josie poured his coffee with careful attention, making sure to avoid the slight chip on the mug's rim. "Our breakfast special today is the country morning. 2 eggs, any style, home fries, bacon or sausage, and toast. The home fries are my son Noah's favorite. He says they're better than birthday cake, but he's 6, so I'm not sure that's the highest culinary praise," she added with a gentle laugh. The man didn't respond, his gaze still fixed on something distant beyond the window. Josie recognized that look. She'd seen it in her own mirror, in the months after Maya's father left, when the weight of single parenthood had felt crushing. "Take your time with the menu," she said softly. "I'll check back in a few minutes." As she moved between tables, refilling coffee and delivering orders, Josie kept an eye on booth 7. The stranger hadn't opened his menu. His coffee remained untouched, steam no longer rising from the dark surface. Mabel caught her attention again. "Order up for table 4, she said, sliding a plate across the counter. Then, more quietly, "That poor man looks like he hasn't eaten in days." Josie glanced back at booth 7. Mabel was right. There was something fragile about him, despite his expensive suit and carefully maintained appearance. Making a quick decision, she headed to the kitchen. "Hey, Charlie," she called to the cook. "Can I get a Sunnyside second chance?" It was her own creation. Not on the menu, but something she occasionally ordered for customers who looked like they needed more than just food. 2 eggs sunny side up, arranged into a smile with a crispy bacon curve underneath, surrounded by golden home fries, and 2 pieces of perfectly browned toast. While Charlie worked his magic, Josie delivered more orders and cleared tables. When the special was ready, she carried it to booth 7, along with a fresh cup of coffee. "I know you didn't order yet," she said, setting the plate down gently, "but sometimes we all need a little breakfast intervention. This one's on the house." The stranger finally looked up, confusion crossing his features. "I didn't." "I know," Josie interrupted kindly. "But those eggs are smiling at you, and it would be rude not to smile back." She gestured to the simple face on the plate. "Besides, I have it on good authority that these home fries are better than birthday cake." She poured fresh coffee into his untouched cup, then added, "You know what the eggs said to the bacon?" The man blinked, thrown off by the unexpected question. "You're looking crispy this morning." Josie delivered the terrible joke with a grin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like sun breaking through storm clouds, the smallest smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It was brief, there and gone in an instant, but real, softening the grief in his eyes for just a moment. As Josie turned to head to her next table, she whispered a quiet prayer under her breath. "Thank you, Lord, for letting one person feel lighter today, because I was here." Dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and purples as Josie unlocked Mabel's diner. The familiar scent of fresh coffee and warm bread greeted her as she flipped on the lights. Charlie was already in the kitchen, whistling while he prepped for the morning rush. The coffee pot gurgled to life, and Josie began her morning routine, wiping down tables, checking salt shakers, and straightening menus. The early morning quiet was her favorite part of the day. Before the rush of customers, before Maya and Noah woke up for school, she had these peaceful moments to herself. She hummed softly while arranging clean mugs behind the counter, pausing only to wave at Walt through the window as he took his morning walk. The bell chimed precisely at 7:10 a.m. Josie looked up to find yesterday's stranger, impeccably dressed in another perfectly tailored suit, this one navy blue, standing in the doorway. Their eyes met briefly before he made his way to the same booth as yesterday, number 7, with its wobbly table. "Good morning," Josie called out, grabbing the coffee pot. "Back for more of our world-famous home fries." He settled into the booth, placing his briefcase beside him with careful precision. "Just coffee, please." "Coming right up." She poured the steaming coffee into a fresh mug, noting how his shoulders seemed to relax slightly at the familiar aroma. "Would you like to see a menu today?" He shook his head. "The same as yesterday, if it's not too much trouble." "One sunny, side second chance, coming right up." Josie smiled warmly. "And this time, you're actually ordering it, so no arguments about paying." That ghost of a smile flickered across his face again, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. She turned toward the kitchen, calling out to Charlie, "1 second chance, please." While the order was being prepared, Mabel arrived, tying her apron as she walked through the door. Her sharp eyes took in the scene: the stranger in booth 7, Josie's thoughtful expression, the fresh coffee service. "Well, well," Mabel murmured as Josie passed behind the counter. "Looks like our mystery man found something worth coming back for." "Mabel," Josie warned quietly, but with affection, "he's just a customer who likes breakfast. Honey, in 30 years of running this place, I've never seen anyone in a $3,000 suit come in for just breakfast." Mabel's eyes twinkled. "Especially not 2 days in a row." Before Josie could respond, Charlie called out, "Order up." She grabbed the plate, grateful for the interruption. The stranger sat exactly as she'd left him, staring out the window at the brightening sky. His coffee cup was already half empty. "Here we go," Josie said cheerfully, setting down his plate. "The eggs are extra smiley today. They must be morning people." He glanced at the plate, then up at her. "Thank you." His eyes found her name tag. Josie. Something about the way he said her name, carefully, like he was testing the sound of it, made her pause. "You're welcome." She hesitated, realizing she didn't know his name. "Lucas," he offered quietly. "Lucas Vale." "Well, Lucas Vale, enjoy your breakfast. I'll be around if you need anything else." The morning rush began to filter in. The regular crowd of retirees, a few hurried business people grabbing coffee to go, and Sarah Jenkins with her twins, who always wanted their pancakes cut into perfect triangles. Josie moved between tables with practiced ease, but she couldn't help noticing how Lucas ate with deliberate care, as if each bite required concentration. When he finished, he placed his napkin beside the empty plate and reached for his wallet. Josie approached with his check, but before she could set it down, he handed her a folded bill. "Keep the change," he said simply, gathering his briefcase. "Thank you, but that's not neck." Josie stopped as she unfolded the bill. It was $100 for a $12 breakfast. "Have a good day, Josie." He stood, straightening his suit jacket with one smooth motion. "Wait, sir, Mr. Vale, this is too much." But he was already walking toward the door, his steps measured and purposeful. The bell chimed his exit, and Josie stood holding the $100 bill, feeling its weight in more ways than one. Mabel appeared at her elbow. "Let me see that," she said, gently taking the bill from Josie's hands. She examined it, then walked behind the counter and pulled out the large glass jar labeled Mabel's Food Pantry. "Mabel, that's his tip. He left it for me," Josie protested. "Honey, that man didn't leave that money for service. He left it because something in this place, something about you, made him feel human again." Mabel folded the bill and slipped it through the slot in the jar's lid. And people who are remembering how to feel human again, they need to know their money is doing good in the world. Josie watched as Mabel adjusted the jar, making sure it was visible but not obvious. Through the front window, she could see Lucas Vale's tall figure walking down the sidewalk, his shoulders straight but somehow lonely against the morning sky. "Why here?" she wondered aloud. "Why me?" Mabel patted her shoulder. "Sometimes, child, a simple act of kindness lands exactly where it's meant to. Now, Table 3 needs more coffee, and those Jenkins twins are about to start a syrup war if you don't intervene." The morning sun filtered through the diner's windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. At precisely 7:10 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. Josie looked up from refilling sugar dispensers to see Lucas Vale step inside, his polished shoes and crisp suit a stark contrast to the worn vinyl booths. "Good morning," she called out, already reaching for the coffee pot. "Same booth?" Lucas gave a slight nod and settled into what was quickly becoming his regular spot. His shoulders remained stiff, but there was something different about him today. Maybe it was the way his eyes didn't seem quite as haunted. "I've got something special for you this morning," Josie said, pouring his coffee with practiced ease. The rich aroma wafted between them. "It's called the Sunnyside Second Chance Special." "I didn't see that on the menu," Lucas replied, his voice quiet but less distant than before. "That's because it's not." Josie smiled warmly. "It's just for people who look like they could use a little extra sunshine in their day." On the house. Before Lucas could protest, she was already heading to the kitchen. Through the order window, she called out to Charlie, "One Sunnyside Special, extra crispy hash browns." "You got it, Jose." Charlie's spatula clinked against the grill. While the food cooked, Josie worked her other tables. Old Mr. Peterson needed his coffee topped off, and Mrs. Martinez was telling anyone who'd listen about her grandson's first tooth. The morning regulars filled the diner with comfortable chatter and the scraping of forks against plates. When the special was ready, Josie carried it to Lucas's table. 2 eggs sunny side up, arranged into a smile with crispy bacon for eyebrows, golden hash browns, and toast cut diagonally. She'd added a small bowl of fresh strawberries on the side. They weren't part of the regular special, but something told her he needed the extra touch of sweetness. "I can't accept this for free," Lucas said, reaching for his wallet. Josie shook her head. "Everyone deserves a second chance at starting their day right. Besides, you've been more than generous with your tips." A hint of color touched Lucas's cheeks. "You noticed?" Mabel notices everything that happens in her diner. Josie gestured to the jar by the register labeled Community Pantry. "Your kindness is helping feed families who need it." Something shifted in Lucas's expression. Surprise, maybe even respect. He looked down at his plate, and for a moment Josie thought she saw his lips twitch upward at the smiling breakfast arrangement. The morning rush picked up, and Josie found herself swept into the familiar dance of orders, refills, and friendly conversations. But she kept an eye on Lucas's booth, noticing how he ate slowly, methodically, as if savoring each bite. He seemed to be watching the diner's routine with increasing interest, particularly when Walt and his veteran buddies came in for their daily coffee clatch. When Lucas finally stood to leave, he left his usual generous tip despite Josie's protests about the free meal. This time, though, he paused before heading to the door. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For the sunshine." Josie's heart warmed at the simple sincerity in his voice. "See you tomorrow?" He nodded, and something that might have been a real smile flickered across his face before he stepped out into the morning light. The rest of Josie's shift passed in a blur of activity. By the time she picked up Maya and Noah from school, helped with homework, made dinner, and got them settled for the night, she was exhausted. But she still had one more task: checking her school email about her nursing program status. Sitting at her small kitchen table, Josie opened her laptop. The house was quiet except for the soft whir of the dishwasher and the distant sound of the kids getting ready for bed. She logged into her student account, dreading what she might find. Her heart had nearly broken when she'd had to withdraw from classes due to unpaid tuition. The email loaded, and Josie blinked hard at the screen, certain she was seeing things wrong. According to the message, her outstanding balance had been paid in full, not just the past due amount, but the entire semester's tuition. She checked the payment details, looking for some explanation. A clerical error maybe, or a mistake in the system. But there it was, in black and white. Payment received and processed. Josie sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Could it be? The timing seemed too perfect to be coincidence, but why would Lucas Vale, a stranger who'd only been coming to the diner for 3 days, do something so extraordinary? She thought about his quiet presence in the diner, the generous tips, the way he'd watched the regulars with growing interest. There was more to him than his expensive suits and reserved manner suggested. The screen blurred as tears welled in her eyes. If it really was him, how could she ever thank him? And if it wasn't, well, either way, this was the second chance she'd been praying for. "Mom?" Maya's voice came from the hallway. "Are you okay?" Josie quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just looking at something for school. Can you come read Noah's new book with us?" "Of course." Josie closed the laptop, leaving the mystery of the paid tuition for another time. Right now, her children needed her, and she had a story to read. She headed to Noah's room, her heart full of gratitude, for her children, for second chances, and for whatever guardian angel had made her dream of becoming a nurse possible again. The morning rush had settled into its usual rhythm at Mabel's diner. The regulars, mostly retired veterans and early bird locals, nursed their coffees while trading friendly barbs across booths. Steam rose from the griddle where Mabel flipped pancakes with the expertise of someone who'd done it for 30 years. Josie balanced a stack of fresh flyers in one hand and a push pin in the other. The Memorial Fundraiser Committee had finally finished designing them, and her heart squeezed a little as she looked at Elena Cruz's smiling face on the paper. The photo had been taken just last spring. Elena's dark hair caught in a slight breeze, her eyes bright with hope despite everything. "Need help with those, honey?" Mabel called from behind the counter. "I've got it," Josie replied, carefully positioning the first flyer on the community bulletin board. "The church basement needs a new heating system before winter hits. Elena used to volunteer there every Wednesday." She stepped back to make sure the flyer hung straight. Elena's face seemed to glow in the morning light streaming through the windows. The text below the photo was simple but meaningful. Elena Cruz Memorial Fund. Keeping hearts warm. The date for the fundraiser dinner was set for next month. Noah, who had been coloring quietly in his usual booth with Maya, wandered over. He stood on his tiptoes to see the picture better. "That's my first mommy," he said matter-of-factly, pointing at Elena's face. Josie knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his small shoulders. "Yes, it is. And she loved you very much. I remember she smelled like flowers," Noah said thoughtfully. "And she sang me songs in Spanish." Maya joined them, ruffling Noah's hair. "Want to help me finish coloring the rocket ship? I saved the red crayon just for you." Noah nodded enthusiastically and scampered back to their booth, the moment of remembrance passing as quickly as it had come. Josie watched him go, grateful for children's resilience and Maya's intuitive kindness. The bell above the door chimed right on schedule. Lucas Vale entered, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the worn linoleum. He moved toward his usual corner booth, but something made him pause mid-stride. His eyes had caught the bulletin board. Josie was arranging menus at the counter when she noticed the change in Lucas's demeanor. The businessman's usual composed expression cracked. Color drained from his face as he stared at Elena's photograph. His hand, reaching for his coffee cup, trembled visibly. The china clinked against the saucer as he set it down with unsteady fingers. Walt, one of the regular veterans seated nearby, glanced up with concern. "You all right there, son? Looking a bit peaked?" Lucas didn't seem to hear him. His eyes remained fixed on Elena's image, something raw and unreadable, flickering across his features. The sound of his phone buzzing in his pocket barely registered. When he finally pulled out his phone, his movements were mechanical, distant. The text message glowed on the screen. "You okay?" It was from Diana, his attorney. The usually stoic businessman sat completely still, caught between Elena's smiling face on the wall and the knowing message from his lawyer. His coffee sat untouched, steam rising into the suddenly heavy air of the diner. The automatic doors of Marshall's grocery slid open with a gentle whoosh. Josie pushed their cart inside, grateful for the blast of cool air. Noah sat in the child's seat, while Maya walked alongside, already pulling out the carefully organized shopping list they'd made together that morning. "Okay, Team Rivera," Josie said, trying to keep her voice upbeat despite her growing headache. "Let's divide and conquer. Maya, can you grab the cereal while I check the produce?" "Can I get the one with marshmallows?" Noah asked, his eyes lighting up. "Nice try, buddy." Josie ruffled his hair. "But we're sticking to the healthy stuff this week. Remember what we talked about?" Maya was already heading toward aisle 3 when Josie heard them. Two women standing by the tomatoes, their heads bent close together. She recognized Mrs. Henderson from the bank and her friend Susan, who worked at the library. "Seen him there every morning," Mrs. Henderson was saying in what she probably thought was a whisper. "A man like that doesn't just show up at some small-town diner for the coffee." "Well, she's certainly playing her cards right," Susan replied with a sniff. "Single mother with 2 kids, one of them not even hers. Must be nice having a billionaire's attention." Josie's hands trembled as she picked up a cucumber, pretending not to hear. The vegetables blurred before her eyes. "Did you see what she was wearing today?" Mrs. Henderson continued. "That uniform suddenly gotten awful tight." Noah's voice cut through their gossip. "Mommy, can we get strawberries?" Josie blinked hard, forcing a smile. "Sure, sweetie. Help me pick the best ones." The women's heads snapped up, faces flushing when they realized Josie was within earshot. They hurried away, leaving their half-filled basket abandoned by the lettuce. Maya returned with the cereal box, her face tight with anger. "I heard them, Mom. They're just jealous old—" "Maya," Josie cut her off gently. "Remember what we say about choosing kindness? Even when other people don't deserve it?" Maya's voice was bitter. Josie pulled her daughter close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Especially then." They finished their shopping quickly, Josie's spine straight despite the weight in her chest. At the checkout, she noticed the cashier giving her a curious look, and her phone buzzed with a text from Mabel. "Call me when you can. There's something you need to see." The next morning dawned gray and humid, matching Josie's mood. She'd barely slept after seeing the blog post Mabel had sent. A grainy photo of Lucas leaving the diner, Josie visible through the window behind him. The comments beneath were cruel, full of speculation and thinly veiled racism. She tied her apron with shaking fingers, trying to focus on her breathing like Pastor Lila had taught her. The bell above the door chimed, and Walt Green walked in with his usual group of veterans. But instead of heading to their regular booth, they gathered at the counter where Trixie Marshall, the local gossip blogger, sat typing on her laptop. "Morning, Trixie," Walt said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that came from decades of military service. "Think we need to have a conversation about that post you made last night." Trixie's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "It's a free country, Walt. I'm just reporting what everyone's talking about." "No," Jack Thompson, another veteran, spoke up. "You're spreading poison, and you know it. Josie's been serving this community for 8 years. She's helped half the people in this town without asking for anything in return. Remember when she stayed late making soup when your mother was sick? Pete Rodriguez added, his weathered face serious. Or how about when she watched your kids for free during that storm last winter? Trixie's face reddened. I'm not saying she's not nice, but nothing. Walt cut in firmly. We've all watched this town tear itself apart with prejudice before. Lost the mill that way, remember? Good people leaving because they didn't feel welcome. We're not doing it again. The diner had gone completely silent. Even Mabel had stopped cooking to listen. That post comes down, Walt continued, and you print a retraction. Not because we're threatening you, we don't do that, but because it's the right thing to do. Because we're better than this. Trixie looked around the diner, meeting the steady gazes of men and women who'd fought for their country, and were now fighting for their community's soul. Her shoulders slumped. Fine, she muttered, opening her laptop. I'll take it down. And? Walt prompted. And I'll write an apology. She glanced at Josie, who had been frozen by the coffee maker. I'm sorry, Josie. Really? Josie managed a nod, her throat too tight for words. Walt turned to her with a gentle smile. Coffee's getting cold, kid, he said, as if he hadn't just moved mountains with a few quiet words. And I believe you promised me your famous blueberry pancakes today. As Josie poured his coffee with trembling hands, she heard Walt murmur, This town's only as good as what we're willing to stand up for. And you're worth standing up for, Josie. Don't you forget that. The setting sun painted the Riverwalk in shades of amber and gold. Saturday evening, crowds strolled along the wooden planks, their chatter mixing with the gentle sound of the river below. Josie held Noah's small hand while Maya skipped ahead, already eyeing Sweet Sally's ice cream cart with its cheerful striped awning. Remember, Josie said, squeezing Noah's hand, just one scoop each. We need to save for movie night, Noah finished, bouncing on his toes. His earlier sadness from the grocery store incident seemed forgotten, replaced by the pure joy only ice cream could bring to a 6-year-old. Maya turned back, her dark ponytail swinging. Can I get mint chocolate chip, as long as you promise not to share with Mr. Whiskers this time? Josie laughed, remembering how their neighbor's cat had gotten sick from Maya's leftover ice cream last month. They joined the short line at Sweet Sally's, where Sally herself was scooping generous portions with practiced efficiency. The elderly woman's smile widened when she saw them approaching. Well, if it isn't my favorite customers, Sally called out. The usual for everyone? Noah pressed his face against the glass display, studying the rainbow of flavors with intense concentration. Can I try the Superman flavor today? Of course, sweetheart. Sally winked at Josie. On the house for my best taste, Tester. Oh, Sally, you don't have to. Josie started to protest. Now, don't you argue with me, Josie Rivera. You've helped me more times than I can count. Sally was already scooping bright blue ice cream into a waffle cone. A familiar voice came from behind them. I'd like to treat everyone today, if that's all right. Josie turned, surprised to find Lucas standing there in casual weekend clothes, jeans, and a light blue button-down shirt rolled up at the sleeves. It was strange seeing him outside the diner, like running into a teacher at the grocery store. Mr. Vale, Noah exclaimed, his face lighting up. Lucas, he gently corrected, smiling at the boy. Remember? Maya looked between Lucas and her mother, curious but quiet. Josie felt her cheeks warm. You really don't need to, please, Lucas said softly. It would make my evening better. Something in his voice made Josie pause. The loneliness she often glimpsed behind his polite facade seemed more pronounced today. She nodded. Thank you. That's very kind. They collected their ice cream, mint chocolate chip for Maya, Superman for Noah, vanilla for Josie, and dark chocolate for Lucas. Sally gave them a knowing smile as they headed toward one of the wooden benches overlooking the river. Look, Mom, Noah held up his cone. My tongue's gonna turn blue. Mine's already green, Maya challenged, sticking out her tongue as proof. Lucas chuckled, a warm sound that seemed to surprise even him. They settled on the bench, kids in the middle, adults on either end. The river flowed peacefully below, catching the last rays of sunlight. I didn't expect to see you here, Josie said. careful to keep her tone light. Lucas watched a pair of ducks glide past. "I've been trying to get out more. Diana, my attorney, says I spend too much time at the office or alone at home." "Well, the Riverwalk's pretty magical at sunset," Maya offered. "Sometimes we see herons fishing. Is that so?" Lucas turned his attention to her, genuine interest in his eyes. "What other wildlife have you spotted?" Maya launched into an enthusiastic catalog of river creatures, while Noah contributed with occasional sound effects. Josie watched as Lucas listened intently, asking questions and seeming to truly care about their answers. It was the most animated she'd seen him outside their morning coffee routine. The ice cream slowly disappeared as they talked. Noah's face was predictably blue, and Maya had a smudge of green on her nose. Even Lucas had relaxed, his shoulders losing some of their usual tension. "Want to walk to the bridge and back?" Josie suggested as they finished. "We might catch the fireflies coming out." The kids jumped up immediately, but Noah paused, looking back at Lucas. "Will you come too?" Something flickered across Lucas's face. Pain? Longing? Before he smiled. "I'd like that." They walked slowly, the kids darting ahead to examine interesting rocks or chase the first emerging fireflies. The evening air was sweet with honeysuckle, and the crowd had thinned as darkness approached. "Thank you," Lucas said quietly, "for letting me join you." "You're always welcome," Josie replied, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "The kids clearly enjoy your company. They're remarkable children." His voice held a note of wistfulness. "You've done an amazing job with them. Maya makes it easy, she's naturally responsible. And Noah," Josie's voice softened, "he has such a big heart, just like his mother did." Lucas's step faltered slightly at the mention of Elena, but before Josie could wonder about it, Noah came running back. His blue-stained mouth was curved in a wide smile as he reached for Lucas's hand. "Look, a shooting star." Noah pointed upward with his free hand, though the sky was barely dark enough for stars. Lucas let himself be pulled closer to the railing, bending down to Noah's level. "Where? Show me." Noah tugged on Lucas's sleeve, leaning in close as if sharing a precious secret. His whispered words carried clearly in the evening quiet. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The world seemed to stop. Lucas stumbled backward, his face draining of color. His hand gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. The easy warmth of the evening shattered like glass. The kitchen clock ticked softly against the silence. Josie's small apartment felt even tinier, with Lucas standing there, his expensive suit jacket draped over one of her mismatched chairs. Through the thin walls, she could hear Noah's gentle breathing from the kids' room. The evening's earlier joy had evaporated, replaced by a heavy tension that filled every corner. Josie's hands trembled as she made coffee, more to have something to do than from any desire to drink it. The ancient coffee maker sputtered and wheezed, filling the cramped space with its familiar aroma. She'd never noticed how worn her linoleum floor looked until she saw Lucas's Italian leather shoes standing on it. "Elena," Josie finally said, keeping her voice low to avoid waking the children. "You knew her?" Lucas gripped the back of the kitchen chair, his knuckles white. "I did. She worked at my estate for almost 2 years. And?" Josie turned to face him, crossing her arms. The overhead light cast shadows under his eyes, making him look haunted. "She was different from the other staff. Noticed things. Would leave fresh flowers in my study after Sarah." He swallowed hard. "After my wife passed." Josie's heart squeezed. She'd known about his wife's death from town gossip, but hearing the pain in his voice made it real. "Noah said Elena told him you gave him his first birthday bike." "I did." Lucas's voice was barely audible. "I gave all the staff's children presents on their birthdays. It was Sarah's tradition. I kept it up after she was gone." The coffee maker beeped. Josie poured 2 cups, adding sugar to hers with shaking hands. She didn't know Lucas's preference, but he accepted the black coffee without comment. "What happened with Elena?" Josie asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Lucas stared into his cup as if the answers might be floating in the dark liquid. "It was about a year after Sarah died. Elena found me in my study late one night. I was not in a good place. She sat with me, just talked. About loss, about hope. His voice grew thick. About how grief doesn't mean the end of love. Josie sank into the chair across from him, her chest tight. And, one night, just one, Lucas set down his cup, running a hand through his hair. She was gone the next morning. Left a note resigning. I respected her wishes, didn't try to contact her. I thought. He looked up, meeting Josie's eyes. I thought she left because of me, because I'd taken advantage. Elena wouldn't have done anything she didn't choose to do, Josie said firmly. She was strong that way. When did you meet her? At church, about 2 years ago. She was already sick by then, but fighting hard. Noah was 4. Josie smiled sadly. She used to say God put people in our paths for a reason, even if we don't understand it at the time. Lucas's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It's Diana, my attorney. I should. Josie nodded. Take it. We all need a minute to breathe anyway. Lucas stepped into the small living room, his voice low but clear enough for Josie to hear through the thin wall. Diana? I need you to look into something. About Elena Cruz, his voice cracked. I think she might have been pregnant when she left. What if he's mine? Noah. What if he's my son? Josie closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Through the wall, she could hear Noah shifting in his sleep, could picture his peaceful face, innocent of the earthquake, shaking the adult world around him. She thought of Elena's last words to her. Promise me you'll keep him safe. Promise me you'll give him the family he deserves. The promise had seemed simple then. Now it felt like a test of everything she believed about love, family, and faith. Lucas ended his call, but remained in the living room. Josie could hear his uneven breathing, could almost feel the weight of his realization pressing against both of them. The kitchen clock kept ticking, marking each second of this new reality where nothing was as simple as it had seemed that morning. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made them both freeze. But it was just Maya, shuffling to the bathroom and back to bed, oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening in her home. The normalcy of it, a child's midnight wandering, made Josie's throat tight. How many more normal moments would they have before everything changed? When Lucas finally returned to the kitchen, his face was ashen. He picked up his jacket with unsteady hands. I should go. It's late, and you need rest. Lucas. Josie stood, her voice gentle but firm. Whatever happens next, we have to think of Noah first. Not our fears, not the town's gossip, not your company's image. Just Noah. He nodded slowly. I know. His hand rested on the doorknob. Josie, I never meant to bring chaos into your life. Life brings its own chaos, she replied softly. What matters is how we face it. After he left, Josie sat alone in her kitchen, watching the moon cast shadows through her small window. The coffee grew cold in their cups, untouched. From the kids' room came the soft sounds of Noah talking in his sleep, something about ice cream and Daddy and the river's endless flow. Sunday morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of Pine Hollow Community Church, casting soft colors across the empty pews. Pastor Lila's office smelled of old books and fresh coffee, with just enough space for the worn leather couch where Josie sat clutching a tissue, and the wooden chair where Lucas perched stiffly, his usual corporate confidence nowhere in sight. Pastor Lila settled into her familiar armchair, her weathered hands folded in her lap. The silver cross at her neck caught the morning light. Start at the beginning, she said gently. Josie's voice quavered. Noah thinks Lucas is his father. Elena, she told him something about, the man who gave you your first birthday bike loves you like a daddy, but he only remembered the daddy part. Lucas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I did give bikes to all the staff's children that year. It was after Sarah. He swallowed hard. After my wife passed, Elena worked at the estate then. And there was one night, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. We were both grieving. She'd lost her husband in Afghanistan. I'd lost Sarah to cancer. It wasn't, we never. He pressed his fingers to his temples. Pastor Lila nodded, her eyes kind but direct. "And now you're wondering if Noah is your biological son?" "Yes." The word seemed to cost Lucas something to say. Josie dabbed at her eyes. "I can't lose him. Noah's been with me since he was 3. When Elena got sick, she asked me to be his guardian. He's my son in every way that matters." "And you, Lucas?" Pastor Lila asked. "What are you afraid of?" Lucas stood abruptly, pacing the small office. "I'm afraid of destroying everything. If I'm his father, do I upend his life? If I'm not, am I abandoning him twice?" He stopped at the window, staring out at the church garden. "I have resources, influence. But money ruined my first marriage. Power isolated me. What if I make everything worse?" "Sit down, son," Pastor Lila said firmly. When Lucas complied, she continued, "Truth without love wounds. Love without truth withers. You need both." "But what's the truth here?" Josie asked. "That biology determines family? Noah already lost his mother. I won't let anyone hurt him again." Pastor Lila reached for her well-worn Bible. "Scripture tells us that love is patient and kind. It does not insist on its own way." She looked between them. "The truth you need isn't just about DNA. It's about commitment, about showing up day after day in ways that heal rather than harm." Lucas's shoulders slumped. "I've been coming to the diner every morning. It's the first time in years I've felt connected, real." He turned to Josie. "I won't take Noah from you, ever. But I need to know if he's my son." Josie twisted the tissue in her hands. "And if he's not? Then I'd still like to be part of his life. Part of both your lives." Color rose in Lucas's cheeks. "If you'll let me." Pastor Lila leaned forward. "Here's what I suggest. Put Noah first. No lawyers, no custody battles. Keep his routine stable. Lucas, if you want to know about paternity, do it privately, and only if Noah feels safe with you." "We could wait," Lucas said slowly. "Get to know each other better first, all of us." Josie nodded, relief softening her features. "Noah already likes you. And the diner, it's been good having you there." "Then that's where we start," Pastor Lila said. "With small, faithful steps. Lucas keeps coming to breakfast. You both watch for Noah's cues, and you pray." She smiled. "Together, right now." They joined hands in a small circle, Lucas's grip tentative at first, then steadying as Pastor Lila prayed. "Lord, guide these two hearts in protecting this precious child. Help them choose love over fear, wisdom over haste, and trust over control. Amen." When they opened their eyes, something had shifted in the room. The morning light seemed warmer, the future less frightening. "I'll make arrangements for a private DNA test," Lucas said quietly. "But only if Noah is ready." Josie met his gaze. "And you'll keep coming to the diner?" "Every morning," Lucas promised. 7:10 sharp. "Bring your own mug next time," Josie said, managing a small smile. "You're wearing out all my cups." Pastor Lila watched them leave her office, walking carefully apart but somehow together, each step measured with new purpose. Through her window, she saw them pause at their cars, exchanging one last look before heading their separate ways. Not an ending, she thought, but a beginning one built on choice rather than chance. The Monday morning sun hadn't yet cleared the mountains when Lucas walked through the diner's door at precisely 7:10 a.m. The bell's gentle chime mixed with the familiar sounds of coffee brewing and plates clinking in the kitchen. A few early regulars huddled over their newspapers, steam rising from their cups. Josie's heart skipped when she saw him, but she steadied herself with a deep breath. She'd barely slept last night, praying for wisdom and strength. This morning felt different, heavier, with the weight of decisions that would affect not just her life, but Noah's future. Lucas slid into his usual corner booth, his suit pristine as always, but his eyes carrying the shadows of a sleepless night. His fingers drummed an anxious rhythm on the worn tabletop. "Coffee?" Josie asked, already pouring the steaming liquid into his usual white mug. "Please." His voice was rough with fatigue. "Josie, about yesterday." "Wait." She held up her hand. Let me get my break cup first. This conversation needs more than just a quick pour and go. She returned a few minutes later with her own coffee and settled across from him. The morning light streaming through the window caught the silver cross pendant at her throat, a gift from Elena years ago. Before we talk about anything else, Josie began, her voice quiet but firm. I need you to understand something. Noah isn't a puzzle to solve, or a business problem to fix. He's a little boy who's already lost so much. Lucas nodded, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. I would never want to hurt him. I believe that, Josie said softly. But good intentions aren't enough. We need clear boundaries and complete honesty. She took a careful sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. First, Noah's emotional safety comes before anything else. No rushed decisions, no dramatic revelations. He needs stability right now, not chaos. Agreed, Lucas said immediately. Whatever the test might show, nothing changes without careful consideration of what's best for him. Josie's shoulders relaxed slightly. Second, we ignore the gossip. The whole town's probably talking by now, but we don't let that pressure us into hasty choices. I can have my PR team? Lucas started. No. Josie shook her head. No teams, no press releases, no corporate solutions. Just us, being honest with each other, and protecting Noah. Lucas sat back, studying her face. You're very good at this, seeing what really matters. I'm a mom, Josie said simply. It's my job to think about what my kids need, not what other people think. The morning light grew stronger, painting golden squares on their table. In the kitchen, Mabel started humming an old hymn while she mixed biscuit dough. There's something else, Josie continued. I need you to understand that my faith isn't just something I do on Sundays, it's how I make sense of all this. She gestured between them. I believe God has a plan, even when things feel messy and confused. Lucas was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup slowly. I haven't thought much about faith since my wife died, he admitted. But I respect yours, and I've seen how it shapes the way you care for people. Then, you'll understand when I say we need to trust God's timing in this, Josie said. We'll do the test, but quietly and carefully. Until then, we just keep showing up. You drink your coffee, we let Noah see that adults can handle hard things with grace, and we pray for wisdom. A small smile touched Lucas's lips. Keep showing up, he repeated. I can do that. Are you sure? Josie asked. This isn't Manhattan. We're not offering artisan roasts or breakfast meetings with CEOs. Just regular coffee and small-town life. This coffee is better, Lucas said firmly. And this booth, he ran his hand along the worn vinyl seat. This is the first place I've felt peace in years. The diner was filling up now. Walt and his veterans claimed their usual table, pretending not to watch the conversation unfolding in the corner. At the counter, Mabel deliberately turned up her radio, giving Josie and Lucas an extra bubble of privacy. One more thing, Josie said, her voice gentle but serious. Whatever the test shows, Noah isn't a possession to be claimed. He's a child who needs love, stability, and people who put his needs first. Can you promise me that's what you want too? Lucas met her eyes steadily. I promise. And I'll prove it, not with money or influence, but by being here. Every morning. For coffee. He glanced toward the end booth where Noah would soon be building his Lego cities. And, for him, Josie nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She'd been afraid of corporate lawyers and custody battles, but the man across from her wasn't showing any signs of wanting to fight. Instead, he looked like someone finally finding his way home. The bell above the door chimed again. Maya walked in with Noah, their backpacks ready for school. Noah's face lit up when he saw Lucas, and he waved enthusiastically. Lucas waved back, then turned to Josie, with quiet determination in his eyes. I meant what I said. I'll be here every morning, no matter what the test shows. I believe you, Josie said softly, and was surprised to realize she truly did. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of the Pine Hollow Veterans Center as Lucas pulled up in his understated sedan. The building was modest, red brick with white trim, an American flag hanging limply in the still air. Walt stood at the entrance, his weathered face breaking into a slight smile as Lucas approached. "Glad you made it," Walt said, extending a firm handshake. "Nothing fancy here, but it's home for a lot of good people." Inside, the center hummed with quiet activity. A dozen or so veterans of various ages gathered around mismatched tables, some playing cards, others hunched over coffee cups. The walls were covered with faded military photos and service medals in simple frames. "Coffee?" Walt asked, leading Lucas to a small kitchenette. "Please." Lucas accepted the styrofoam cup, noting how different it felt from his usual artisanal brew. They settled at a corner table where 3 other veterans sat. Mike, a former factory worker with calloused hands. James, who'd served 2 tours in Vietnam like Walt. And Carlos, younger than the others, his prosthetic leg propped carefully beside him. "So you're the suit who's been brightening up Josie's mornings," Mike said. But there was no malice in his tone. Just straight-talking curiosity. Lucas nodded, taking a careful sip of coffee. "She's been brightening mine, actually. Town's changed a lot since we were young," James said, his fingers drumming slowly on the table. "Factory closing hit us hard, harder for some than others." His eyes drifted to a wall of photos, faces of veterans who'd worked at the old mill. 23 years I put in at that place," Mike added quietly. "Then one day, poof, new owners said it wasn't profitable enough. Didn't matter how many kids we had to feed." Carlos leaned forward, his voice steady but tight. "Try finding work with one leg and brown skin in a small town. Even with combat medals, doors close pretty quick when they see me coming." Lucas listened, really listened, as the stories flowed. Walt occasionally added context, but mostly he let the men speak their truth. They talked about friends lost to despair after the layoffs, about families torn apart by economic pressure, about the subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination that made starting over feel impossible. "Elena, Noah's mama, she understood," Carlos said softly. "She'd bring extra food to my kids when I couldn't find work, never made me feel less for taking it." Lucas's hand tightened around his cup at the mention of Elena's name. Walt noticed, but didn't comment. "What we need isn't handouts," James explained, his dignity evident in every word. "We need chances, real training for today's jobs, ways to use our skills that don't require us to leave our families or pretend we're something we're not." The afternoon wore on, and more veterans drifted over to share their stories. Lucas noticed how they supported each other. A quiet word here, a gentle clap on the shoulder there. Despite everything, there was strength in their unity. As the sun began to set, Walt walked Lucas back to his car. They stood for a moment in the growing darkness. "Thank you," Lucas said simply, "for trusting me with their stories." Walt nodded, his eyes serious. "Question is, what are you going to do with them?" Back in his hotel room, Lucas paced, his tie loosened, jacket discarded. The faces and voices from the Veterans Center wouldn't leave him. He thought about Elena, about Noah, about Josie's unwavering faith in second chances. He picked up his phone and dialed Diana's number. "Diana? I need you to draft some documents immediately." He paused, looking out the window at the town lights below. "We're redirecting a significant portion of our philanthropy budget. I want comprehensive job training programs established in rural areas, starting with Pine Hollow. Priority placement for veterans, minorities, and anyone who's faced discrimination in the workforce." "Lucas." Diana's voice held a note of caution. "The board. The board works for the shareholders, and I'm still the majority shareholder." Lucas cut in, his voice firm but not unkind. "Make it happen, Diana, and make sure it's done right, not just for show. These people deserve better than empty promises." He could hear Diana typing on her laptop. "Parameters? Full vocational training. Technology, healthcare, skilled trades. Whatever people need to build real careers here. Partner with local churches and community centers for implementation. And Diana, make sure the Veterans Center here is involved in the planning. They know what their community needs better than we do." "It'll take time to set up properly," Diana warned. "Then we better start now." Lucas's voice softened as he added, Time's the one thing these people have already lost too much of. After hanging up, Lucas stood at the window for a long time, watching the lights of Pine Hollow twinkle against the dark mountains. Somewhere out there, Josie was probably tucking Noah into bed, maybe reading him a story. He thought about Elena, about how she'd helped others, even when she had so little herself. The veteran's words echoed in his mind. We need chances. Maybe that's what Elena had been trying to give everyone, just one more chance to get it right. Lucas intended to honor that legacy. One person, one family, one community at a time. The bell above Mabel's diner chimed as Lucas stepped inside, clutching a large box wrapped in bright blue paper under his arm. The evening crowd had thinned out, leaving just a few regulars nursing their coffee at the counter. Noah and Maya sat at their usual corner booth, homework spread across the worn tabletop. Mr. Vale. Noah's face lit up as he spotted Lucas. Maya glanced up from her math worksheet, her expression guarded but curious. Lucas approached their table, his expensive shoes clicking against the checkered floor. I thought you both might enjoy this. He set the package down carefully, avoiding Maya's scattered pencils. Noah bounced in his seat. Can I open it, please? May I? Maya corrected automatically, then blushed when Lucas smiled at her. She sounds just like your mom, Lucas said to Noah, sliding into the booth across from them. And yes, you may open it. It's for both of you. Noah's small fingers tore into the paper while Maya watched, trying to maintain her air of careful disinterest. The paper fell away to reveal a massive Lego castle set, complete with towers, a drawbridge, and tiny knights. Whoa! Noah breathed, pressing his hands against the box. Maya, look, it's got dragons. Maya's composure cracked slightly. That's pretty cool, she admitted, leaning forward to examine the picture on the box. I used to build these with my father, Lucas said quietly, his fingers trailing over the corner of the box. Some of my best memories. Josie appeared at their table, coffee pot in hand. What's all this? She asked, her eyes warm as she took in the scene. Mr. Vale brought us a castle, Noah announced, practically vibrating with excitement. Can we build it now, please? Your homework first, Josie reminded him gently. She filled Lucas's cup, their fingers brushing briefly as she handed it back. I can help with the math, Lucas offered, looking at Maya. If you'd like? Maya hesitated, then pushed her worksheet toward him. I'm stuck on fractions. For the next 20 minutes, Lucas patiently walked Maya through her problems, while Noah raced through his reading assignment. Josie moved between tables, occasionally glancing over at them with a soft smile. Finally, Noah slammed his book shut. Done. Now can we build? Lucas helped them clear the table, carefully stacking their homework to one side. Together they opened the box and dumped out the pieces, creating a rainbow of plastic blocks between them. We need to sort them first, Maya said authoritatively, already beginning to separate the pieces by color. That's the best way. Lucas nodded approvingly. Good strategy. Noah, want to help me find all the gray pieces for the walls? Noah dove in eagerly, his small hands sifting through the pile. The tension in Maya's shoulders gradually eased as they worked together, her organizational skills complementing Lucas's steady guidance and Noah's enthusiasm. The drawbridge needs these special pieces, Lucas explained, showing them how the mechanism worked. See how they fit together? Like this? Noah attempted to snap two pieces together, his tongue sticking out in concentration. Almost. Try turning it the other way, Maya suggested, reaching over to help her brother. The castle slowly took shape under their combined efforts. Lucas showed them tricks for making the walls stronger, while Maya discovered a clever way to arrange the tiny flags along the battlements. Noah supplied sound effects for every dragon and knight they added. The princess needs a library, Maya decided, using smaller pieces to create bookshelves inside one of the towers. So she can be smart, like Mom, Lucas smiled. Your mom is pretty amazing, he agreed, helping Noah attach another turret. She works very hard for you both. She's the best mom ever, Noah declared loyally. And she makes the best pancakes too. Hey now, Josie called from behind the counter where she was restocking supplies. No revealing my secret pancake recipe? Their laughter filled the diner, warm and genuine. Lucas showed them how to add final details. Tiny flowers in the courtyard, a well made from rounded pieces, windows that actually opened. "It's perfect," Noah breathed, admiring their creation from all angles. "Almost," Maya said. She placed the last night on top of the highest tower. "There, now it's perfect." The pride on their faces made Lucas's chest tight with emotion. He watched as Noah made the dragon swoop around the castle walls, while Maya adjusted the tiny books in her library tower, both children completely absorbed in their creation. Josie paused in her work, leaning against the counter to watch them. The sight of Lucas, still in his expensive suit but with Lego pieces scattered across his lap, playing with her children made her heart swell. A tear slipped down her cheek as Noah's delighted giggle mixed with Maya's more reserved chuckle and Lucas's deep laugh. She quickly wiped it away, but not before catching Lucas's eye. He smiled at her, gentle understanding in his gaze, before turning back to help Noah rescue a knight who had fallen into the moat. Maya caught her mother's expression and sat up straighter, suddenly remembering she was supposed to be suspicious of this man. But then Lucas showed her how to make a secret door in the castle wall, and she couldn't help smiling back at him. The castle stood proudly in the center of their table, a testament to their teamwork. Noah's dragons and knights were engaged in an epic battle, while Maya's princess read books to the townspeople in her library tower. Lucas sat back, watching them play, his coffee long forgotten. From her spot by the counter, Josie watched the three of them together. Maya's usual guardedness softening into genuine enjoyment, Noah's boundless enthusiasm, and Lucas's gentle patience with them both. Another tear threatened to fall, but this time she didn't wipe it away. It was a tear of hope, of possibility, of seeing her children's hearts opening to someone new. The evening light streamed through the diner's windows, casting a golden glow over their little scene. The castle's flags cast tiny shadows across the table, and the sound of her children's laughter mixed with Lucas's warmed Josie's heart in ways she hadn't expected. The church basement hummed with activity, as volunteers set up long folding tables and arranged mismatched chairs. Warm light from old fluorescent fixtures cast a homey glow over the worn linoleum floor. In the kitchen, Mabel Atkins stood at the industrial stove, her experienced hands moving with practiced efficiency as she supervised 3 different dishes at once. Lucas Vale, his suit jacket carefully hung on a hook and his sleeves rolled up, watched intently as Mabel demonstrated the proper way to season a cast-iron skillet. "Now pay attention," Mabel instructed, her voice stern but kind. "Here's my grandmother's skillet, passed down 3 generations. You treat it like the treasure it is." Lucas nodded, holding the heavy pan with reverence. "My mother had one just like this. She used to make cornbread every Sunday." "Did she now?" Mabel's eyes softened. "Well then, let's see if we can't bring back some of that memory." She handed him a bowl of carefully measured cornmeal mixture. "Pour it in nice and slow, just like I showed you." The batter sizzled as it hit the hot surface, and Lucas felt an unexpected lump in his throat. The sound, the smell. It all brought him back to Sunday afternoons in his mother's kitchen, before wealth and corporate responsibilities had taken over his life. "You're doing fine," Mabel assured him, noting his expression. "Sometimes the simplest things carry the most weight, don't they?" From the dining area came the sound of children laughing. Lucas glanced through the serving window to see Noah and Maya helping Josie set out paper napkins and plastic utensils. Noah was wearing his favorite superhero t-shirt, and Maya had her hair pulled back in neat braids. "They're good kids," Mabel commented, following his gaze. "Josie's done right by them, especially considering everything she's been through." Lucas watched as Josie caught Noah before he could knock over a stack of cups, her movement both practiced and gentle. "She's remarkable," he said quietly. "That she is." Mabel checked the cornbread with a toothpick. "And she's not looking for anyone to rescue her, you understand? She just needs folks who'll stand beside her, come what may." "I'm learning that," Lucas admitted, carefully rotating the skillet to ensure even browning. "Every morning at the diner, every story she shares, I'm learning." The kitchen door swung open, and Josie poked her head in. "Mabel, Pastor Lila wants to know if we're ready to." "Oh, She stopped short at the sight of Lucas in an apron, handling Mabel's prized skillet. "I didn't know you could cook." "He's learning," Mabel said with a wink. "His mama taught him cornbread, apparently." Josie stepped fully into the kitchen, her eyes warm. "Really? I'd love to hear about that sometime." Before Lucas could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He recognized Diana's number on the screen. "Excuse me," he said, stepping toward the back door. "I need to take this." Outside, the evening air was cool and crisp. "Diana? What is it?" "Lucas." Diana's voice was carefully controlled. "I just got a call from the lab. There's been a complication." His hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of complication?" "The DNA test results came back inconclusive. There was an error in the processing. They'll need to redo the entire thing." Lucas closed his eyes, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle back onto his shoulders. For weeks, they'd been waiting for these results, trying to prepare for either outcome. Now they were back at square one. Through the kitchen window, he could see Josie helping Mabel arrange cornbread on serving platters. Noah darted past, stealing a piece when he thought no one was looking. Maya caught him and shook her head, but she was smiling. "Lucas?" Diana's voice brought him back. "We can schedule another test right away. I'll make sure they expedite." "No," Lucas interrupted, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "No, we'll wait." "Wait? But don't you want to know?" "Of course I want to know," he said quietly. "But right now, there's cornbread to serve, and children who need help with their homework and mornings at the diner that matter more than test results." He could hear the surprise in Diana's voice. "That's not the response I expected." "A few months ago, it wouldn't have been my response," Lucas admitted. "But I'm learning something about family here in Pine Hollow. It's not just about blood or DNA. It's about showing up. It's about being present." Through the window, Josie caught his eye and gestured for him to come back inside. The cornbread was ready to be served. "I'll call you tomorrow, Diana," he said. "We can discuss scheduling another test then. Right now, I have a community dinner to attend." He hung up and took a deep breath of the evening air. Then he straightened his shoulders and went back inside, where Mabel immediately handed him a serving spoon. "Everything all right?" Josie asked quietly, as they worked side by side, placing perfectly golden squares of cornbread onto plates. Lucas looked at her, really looked at her, and felt the tension in his chest ease. "The test results were inconclusive," he said. "They'll need to do it again." Josie's hands stilled for a moment. "Oh," she said softly. "Are you? How do you feel about that?" Lucas surprised himself by smiling. "Right now, I feel like serving some cornbread, helping Noah with his reading later, and being exactly where I am." The relief in Josie's eyes made his heart lift. She nodded, understanding everything he wasn't saying. "Well then," she said, picking up a plate, "let's serve some cornbread." Together, they carried the platters out to the waiting tables, where the community of Pine Hollow was gathering, drawn by the promise of good food and better company. Noah waved frantically from his seat, and Maya had saved a chair next to her, her earlier guardedness softening into cautious acceptance. The 64th floor conference room of Vail Technologies towered above downtown Charlotte. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but Lucas Vail barely noticed the vista. He sat at the head of a gleaming mahogany table, surrounded by 12 board members in expensive suits and carefully neutral expressions. Richard Holbrook, the lead director, cleared his throat. His perfectly manicured hands shuffled through a stack of papers. "Lucas, we need to discuss your recent activities in Pine Hollow." Lucas maintained his calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. "What about them?" "The media coverage is concerning." Barbara Chen, another board member, cut in. She tapped her tablet, bringing up several news articles on the wall screen. "A billionaire CEO playing small-town father? It's damaging our corporate image. Your behavior is erratic." Richard continued, his voice carrying that particular tone of false concern that Lucas had grown to hate. "First, you're spotted repeatedly at some local diner. Then there are rumors about a possible illegitimate child. Now you're redirecting corporate philanthropy without proper board consultation." Lucas leaned back in his chair, his expression carefully controlled. Our philanthropy budget is well within my discretionary authority as CEO. It's not about the money, Barbara insisted. It's about perception. Our shareholders expect Vail Technologies to maintain a certain standard. And what standard would that be? Lucas's voice was quiet but sharp. Richard slid a document across the table. We've prepared a statement. You'll announce a temporary leave of absence, citing personal matters. It will give things time to cool down. Lucas didn't touch the paper. Instead, he stood up slowly, placing both hands on the table as he looked around the room. Let me be clear about something. Those small-town people you're so worried about? They're the ones who make this company work. They're the ones who use our products, who trust us with their data, their dreams, their futures. This isn't about class warfare, Richard protested. It's about protecting the company's interests. No, Lucas's voice grew stronger. It's about protecting your comfort. You're afraid of what it means when a CEO steps out of his ivory tower and sees the real world. Barbara's perfectly composed face showed a crack of irritation. Lucas, be reasonable. Your involvement with these people is becoming a liability. The gossip blogs are having a field day. There are questions about your judgment. Lucas felt a familiar anger rising in his chest, but this time it was different. It wasn't the cold, calculated anger he'd used to build his empire. This was something warmer, more human, the kind of anger that came from watching good people being dismissed as inconvenient. My judgment? He straightened up. My judgment is telling me that we've lost our way. We started this company to make technology that helps people live better lives, not to create another wall between the haves and have-nots. The board has a responsibility, Richard began. Lucas cut him off. To whom? To Wall Street, to the country club crowd. He pulled up his own presentation on the screen. Look at these numbers. Our rural market penetration is falling. Our user trust metrics are down. You know why? Because people can tell when you think you're better than them. The room fell silent as graphs and charts filled the screen. Lucas continued, his voice steady and determined. Pine Hollow isn't some backwater I'm playing in. It's America. It's where real people live, work, and raise their families. And they deserve more than our condescension. This is about that woman and her kid, isn't it? Someone muttered from the far end of the table. Lucas's hand slammed down hard on the mahogany, making water glasses jump. We don't build machines, he declared, his voice ringing through the stunned silence. We build lives. People live in towns like Pine Hollow. The autumn air crackled with excitement as Pine Hollow's annual fall festival transformed the town square into a wonderland of twinkling lights and cheerful chaos. Colorful booths lined the streets, the smell of kettle corn and cinnamon donuts drifting on the cool breeze. Josie adjusted Noah's striped scarf as they walked past the game booths. Look, sweetie, there's the ring toss. Can we try it? Noah bounced on his toes, pointing at the rows of glass bottles. Please, Mommy? Maya rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. You're too little to throw that far. I can help. A familiar voice called from behind them. Lucas approached, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, looking decidedly un-CEO-like in jeans and a soft gray sweater. Lucas! Noah launched himself forward, wrapping his arms around Lucas's legs. The man's face softened as he ruffled Noah's hair. Thought I might find you all here, Lucas said, meeting Josie's eyes with a warm smile. Mind if I join? You better, Maya piped up, surprising everyone. Noah needs someone tall to help him win that penguin. They made their way through the festival together, stopping at nearly every booth. Lucas proved terrible at the ring toss, much to everyone's amusement, but redeemed himself at the balloon dart game. Noah clutched his newly won stuffed penguin, beaming with pride. The Ferris wheel, Noah gasped as they rounded the corner. The massive wheel stood outlined against the darkening sky, its lights reflecting in his wide eyes. Josie hesitated. I don't know, honey. It's pretty high. I'll go with him, Lucas offered. If that's okay. She studied his face, the gentle certainty there, the way he'd naturally fallen into step with their little family over these past weeks. Actually, why don't we all go? The line moved quickly, and soon they were being ushered into one of the swaying cars. Noah scrambled in first, followed by Maya. Lucas helped Josie up, his hand warm and steady against hers. As they rose into the evening sky, Noah pressed his face against the metal bars. "Look, we can see the whole town." Below them, Pine Hollow spread out like a jeweled blanket, festival lights twinkling against the growing dusk. The river curved like a silver ribbon in the distance, and the church steeple stood proud against the purple-orange sunset. "It's beautiful," Josie whispered, unconsciously leaning closer to Lucas. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and she felt the quiet strength there. Maya caught her eye from across the car and gave a tiny nod of approval that made Josie's heart swell. At the very top, their car swayed gently in the breeze. Noah's penguin dropped to the floor as he pointed excitedly at something in the distance. When Lucas bent to retrieve it, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Josie saw him glance at the screen, his expression shifting slightly. "Diana?" she asked softly. He nodded, showing her the message. "Results are in." The world seemed to pause for a moment, suspended as high as they were above the ground. Maya and Noah's chatter faded into background noise as Josie and Lucas looked at each other. "Not here," Josie whispered. "Let's wait until after." Lucas squeezed her shoulder in agreement, and they rode the rest of the way down in contemplative silence, both lost in their own thoughts, while the children continued their excited commentary about the view. As they stepped off the Ferris wheel, the first boom of fireworks lit up the sky. Noah jumped, then laughed as red and gold sparks rained down above them. "Over there." Lucas pointed to a quiet spot near the gazebo, away from the main crowd. They made their way over, finding a bench partially sheltered by old oak trees. Maya, showing unusual perception for her age, took Noah's hand. "Come on, let's get a better view of the fireworks." She led him a short distance away, just far enough to give the adults privacy while staying within sight. Lucas pulled out his phone, hands slightly unsteady. Josie reached over and covered his fingers with hers. Together, they opened Diana's email and read the attached lab report. The medical terminology swam before their eyes, but the conclusion was clear. Lucas was not Noah's biological father. Josie felt Lucas's sharp intake of breath, saw the way his shoulders tensed, then dropped. She waited, heart pounding, for his reaction. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears, but he was smiling. "It doesn't change anything," he said firmly. "Not how I feel about him. Not how I feel about any of you." Above them, another burst of fireworks painted the sky in brilliant blues and silvers. The light caught the tears now falling freely down Josie's cheeks. "Blood doesn't make a promise," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she squeezed his hand. "People do." Lucas pulled her close, and they held each other as the fireworks continued to explode overhead. Noah's delighted laughter carried across the grass, mingling with Maya's excited commentary about each new display. They stayed like that, their little family spread between the bench and the grass, watching as the sky bloomed again and again with light and color. Noah's penguin sat propped between them, a silent witness to promises that had nothing to do with DNA and everything to do with love. Golden morning light streamed through the diner's windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air. The usual breakfast crowd hadn't arrived yet, leaving the space peaceful and quiet. In their corner booth, Lucas sat with an open picture book propped against the table, his deep voice gentle as he read to Noah. "The little engine puffed harder and harder up the mountain," Lucas read, pointing to each word. Noah nestled against his side, completely absorbed in the story. Maya sat across from them, absently stirring her chocolate milk with a straw. Her usual wall of skepticism showed tiny cracks as she watched Lucas use different voices for each character in the story. When he made the sound of a struggling train engine, Noah giggled, and Maya's lips twitched into an almost smile. Josie moved between tables, setting out silverware for the day, but her eyes kept drifting back to her booth. Lucas wore a simple sweater today instead of his usual suit, and somehow that small change made him seem more real, more present, more like he belonged. "I think the engine's gonna make it," Noah declared, pointing at the page. "Right, Maya?" Maya shrugged, but then added softly, "Course it will." That's how these stories work. Lucas glanced up at her, his eyes warm. You sound like you've read this one before. Mom used to read it to me, Maya admitted, then quickly looked down at her pancakes. When I was little, I mean. Josie paused her work, holding her breath. This was the first time Maya had voluntarily shared anything personal with Lucas. Did you have a favorite part? Lucas asked, his tone careful and genuine. Maya pushed a piece of pancake around her plate. I liked when all the other engines said no, but this little one said yes anyway. She looked up, meeting Lucas's eyes, even though it was hard. Lucas nodded slowly. That's my favorite part too. Sometimes the hardest thing is just showing up, right? Like you do, Noah piped up. Every morning. A soft blush colored Maya's cheeks, but she didn't look away. Yeah, I guess so. Josie watched as Lucas carefully turned the page, his fingers gentle with the worn paper. Noah pointed out letters he recognized, while Maya gradually scooted closer to see the illustrations better. The morning sun wrapped around them like a warm blanket, making everything feel soft and possible. I thought I could, Lucas read, his voice building with the story's climax. I thought I could. I thought I could. I knew it. Noah bounced in his seat. The little engine did it, because it didn't give up, Maya added quietly, then caught herself being enthusiastic and tried to look uninterested again. But the mask didn't quite stick this time. Lucas closed the book with care. Thank you both for letting me read to you. Can we do another one tomorrow? Noah asked, hope shining in his eyes. Before Lucas could answer, Maya spoke up. We have more books at home, if you want to see them sometime. The invitation hung in the air like a delicate soap bubble. Lucas's expression softened with understanding of what this moment meant. I'd like that very much, Maya. Thank you. Josie's hands trembled slightly as she wiped down a nearby table. She watched as Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a chess piece, the white knight she always carried for luck. Do you know how to play? Maya asked Lucas, trying to sound casual but not quite managing it. I do, though I'm probably rusty, Lucas replied. Would you be willing to teach me your strategies? A real smile broke across Maya's face, quick as lightning but just as bright. Maybe, if you're serious about learning. I am. Lucas's voice carried the weight of a promise. Very serious. Noah tugged on Lucas's sleeve. Can I learn too, please? Of course, buddy. Lucas ruffled Noah's hair. Maybe Maya can teach us both. Maya sat up straighter, pride replacing her usual defensive posture. We could start with how the pieces move. That's what Mom taught me first. Josie watched as Maya carefully set up her chess piece on a napkin, explaining to both Lucas and Noah how the knight moved in an L shape. Lucas leaned forward, asking thoughtful questions that made Maya's eyes light up with excitement. Noah tried to mimic the move with his fork, making both Maya and Lucas laugh. The scene before her blurred slightly as tears welled in Josie's eyes. This wasn't just breakfast. This was healing happening right before her eyes. Maya's walls weren't crumbling dramatically, but brick by brick, she was creating a small door, testing if it was safe to let Lucas through. The morning sun continued to paint everything in soft gold, making even the simple diner feel magical. The empty tables around them seemed to fade away, leaving just this moment, just this family finding its way to each other. Mommy, Noah called out. Come look, Maya's teaching us chess. Josie walked over, her heart full to bursting. She rested her hand on Maya's shoulder, feeling her daughter lean into the touch instead of pulling away. Under her breath, too quiet for anyone else to hear, Josie whispered to herself, "This is what family looks like." The doorbell rang just as Josie was tucking Noah into bed. She glanced at the clock. 8:45 p.m. Who could be visiting this late? Maya looked up from her homework at the kitchen table, eyebrows raised in question. "I'll get it," Josie said softly, pulling Noah's dinosaur blanket up to his chin. "Sweet dreams, baby." She opened the front door to find an older man in an expensive suit standing there, his face stern and familiar. Behind him stood another man clutching a leather briefcase, the first man's eyes. They were Elena's eyes. "Arturo Cruz," he announced, his voice clipped. "I'm Noah's grandfather. This is my attorney, Mr. Davidson." Josie's heart stuttered. She'd only seen him once before, at Elena's funeral, where he'd stood apart from everyone else, rigid with grief and anger. "It's very late," Josie managed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Noah's just gone to bed. This won't wait." Arturo pushed past her into the small apartment. His gaze swept critically over the worn furniture, the cramped space. "I've come for my grandson." Maya appeared in the hallway, her face pale. "Mom, go to your room, sweetheart," Josie said quietly. Maya hesitated, then slipped away. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Rivera, we're filing for immediate emergency custody of Noah Cruz. We have serious concerns about his current living situation." Josie's legs felt weak. She gripped the back of a kitchen chair. What concerns? Living in a one-bedroom apartment, working irregular hours, consorting with wealthy men for financial gain. Arturo's words dripped with disdain. "I've seen the articles, the photographs. Using my grandson to trap some billionaire." "That's not true," Josie whispered. "Lucas is exactly my point," Arturo cut in. "First-name basis with Lucas Vale? The man's worth billions. What could he possibly want with a waitress unless she was using a child to manipulate him?" The lawyer pulled papers from his briefcase. "We have documentation of your financial struggles, Ms. Rivera. Your multiple jobs. The late rent payments before Mr. Vale started appearing at your workplace." "Stop it," Josie said, her voice stronger now. "I have never asked Lucas for money. I work hard to provide for both my children. Noah is happy and healthy and loved." "Children need stability," Arturo insisted. "Family. Real family, blood family, not whatever arrangement you've constructed here." Josie's hands were shaking. "Elena chose me to care for Noah. She trusted me." "My daughter was young and foolish," Arturo snapped. "She worked as a maid, got pregnant, died leaving her son with a stranger." His voice cracked slightly before hardening again. "I should have stepped in sooner. I'm stepping in now." The lawyer handed Josie a thick envelope. "These are the custody filing papers. We'll be requesting an emergency hearing. Given the circumstances, the questionable living conditions, the potential exploitation of the child, we believe the court will grant temporary custody to Mr. Cruz pending full review." Josie stared at the envelope, her vision blurring. "You can't just take him. He's happy here. He's settled. He belongs with his family," Arturo insisted. "In a proper home, with proper opportunities." A small voice came from the hallway. "Mommy?" They all turned to see Noah standing there in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching his stuffed T-Rex. His eyes were wide with confusion. "It's okay, baby," Josie said quickly, moving to shield him from view. "Go back to bed." But Arturo stepped forward. "Noah, I'm your grandfather. Your mama's papa." Noah pressed against Josie's legs, hiding his face. "You see?" Arturo's voice was bitter. "He doesn't even know me. Elena shut me out of his life, and now you're doing the same." "That's not fair," Josie protested. "You never tried to." "We'll let the courts decide what's fair," the lawyer interrupted smoothly. "Mr. Cruz has substantial resources and an excellent case for custody. I suggest you obtain legal representation immediately." 3 days later, Josie sat numbly in a Stark government office as a Child Protective Services worker explained that they were required to investigate all claims in emergency custody filings. That standard procedure required temporary placement with blood relatives when available. That they had to err on the side of caution. "It's just until the hearing," the worker said gently. 2 weeks at most." Noah clung to Josie, sobbing. "I want to stay with Mommy." "I know, sweetheart," Josie whispered, holding him close. "It's just for a little while. I promise I'll see you every day." Arturo stood by the door, face impassive. He'd brought a new backpack for Noah, filled with expensive toys. It sat unopened on a chair. "Time to go, Noah," the CPS worker said softly. Josie forced herself to loosen her arms, to smile through her tears, to stand up straight as her heart shattered. "Be brave for me, okay?" she managed. "I love you so much." "Love you too, Mommy," Noah hiccuped, as Arturo took his small hand. Josie watched them walk away, Noah's dinosaur backpack bobbing with each step. The CPS worker touched her arm sympathetically, but Josie barely felt it. She drove to Mabel's on autopilot, parking behind the diner where she always did. But she couldn't make herself go inside. Couldn't face the empty booth where Noah usually did his coloring. Couldn't handle the pitying looks, the whispered conversations. Her legs gave out as she reached the back steps. She sank down onto the concrete, pressed her face into her hands, and finally let herself break. Great, heaving sobs tore through her body as the reality crashed over her. Her boy was gone. Her sweet, funny, beautiful boy had been taken away. The setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. A cool breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves. And Josie Rivera sat alone on the diner's back steps, her heart lying in pieces around her feet. The apartment felt wrong without Noah's presence. Everything was too neat, too quiet, too empty. Josie stood in the doorway of his bedroom, staring at the perfectly made bed she hadn't been able to touch since CPS had taken him 3 days ago. His favorite stuffed T-Rex still sat propped against the pillow, waiting for a hug that wouldn't come. Maya had gone to stay with her best friend's family for the night, unable to bear the silence. Josie understood. Every corner of their home echoed with Noah's absence. His small sneakers sat by the front door, the ones with Lightning McQueen on the sides that lit up when he jumped. A half-finished Lego castle dominated the coffee table, the pieces frozen in mid-construction. His favorite cereal bowl sat in the dish rack, decorated with superheroes that were starting to fade from too many washings. Josie's fingers traced the height marks on the doorframe where she'd measured both kids every month. Noah's latest mark, from just 2 weeks ago, showed how he'd grown almost an inch since summer. Would she get to add another mark next month? The weight of it all, the emptiness, the uncertainty, the fear, crashed over her like a wave. Her knees gave out and she sank to the floor beside Noah's bed, clutching his pillow to her chest. It still smelled like his baby shampoo. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, God, don't let them take him away forever." The tears came then, hot and desperate. She couldn't hold them back anymore. Every brave face she'd put on, at the diner, at church, for Maya, for Lucas, crumbled away. Here in the dark, alone with her fear, Josie let herself fall apart. She cried for Noah, scared and confused in a strange house with a grandfather he barely knew. She cried for Elena, who had trusted her to keep her son safe. She cried for Maya, whose young heart was breaking all over again. And she cried for herself, for the helplessness that threatened to swallow her whole. "I promised to protect him," she sobbed into the pillow. "I promised, Elena. I promised." The digital clock on Noah's nightstand blinked steadily. 2:17 a.m. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sweeping across the ceiling. The neighbor's cat meowed somewhere in the distance. But inside, the apartment felt like a tomb. Josie couldn't bring herself to move from the floor. Moving meant accepting this was real. Moving meant facing another day without Noah's morning cuddles, without his silly jokes at breakfast, without his small hand slipping into hers as they walked to school. A gentle knock at the front door startled her. For a wild moment, her heart leaped. But no, it wouldn't be Noah. Through the peephole, she saw Pastor Lila standing there, holding what looked like a covered dish. Josie almost didn't answer. She didn't want anyone to see her like this, face swollen from crying, still in yesterday's clothes, completely broken. But Pastor Lila knocked again, softer this time. "Josie," she called quietly through the door. "I brought mac and cheese. You don't have to talk. You don't even have to eat it. But I'm not leaving you alone tonight." With trembling hands, Josie unlocked the door. Pastor Lila took one look at her and set the casserole dish on the entry table. Without a word, she pulled Josie into a tight hug. "Let it out, child," she murmured, her strong arms holding Josie together as fresh tears came. "The Lord catches every tear. He sees your mama's heart breaking. You don't have to be strong right now." They ended up sitting on the floor beside Noah's bed, shoulders touching, backs against the wall. Pastor Lila didn't try to offer empty comfort or false promises. She simply sat, a steady presence in the darkness, while Josie's tears gradually slowed. "I keep thinking about him waking up somewhere else," Josie whispered finally. "He has trouble sleeping in new places. He needs his nightlight. Does Arturo know that?" Does he know Noah likes the crusts cut off his sandwiches? Or that he's afraid of the vacuum cleaner? Or that he needs someone to check under the bed for monsters? Pastor Lila reached over and took Josie's hand, squeezing it gently. A mother's heart knows all these things. That's why we're going to fight for him. The whole church is behind you. God hasn't brought you and Noah this far to leave you now. The night crept on, but Pastor Lila stayed. She didn't try to make Josie move to somewhere more comfortable. She didn't push her to eat or sleep. She just sat, keeping vigil, her quiet presence a reminder that Josie wasn't alone in this battle. As the first pale light of dawn began to creep through Noah's window, Pastor Lila started humming softly, an old hymn about finding shelter in the storm. The familiar melody wrapped around Josie like a warm blanket, and for the first time in days, she felt her shoulders relax just a little. They sat together, watching the sunrise paint Noah's room in gentle gold, neither speaking but both praying in their hearts for the little boy who should have been sleeping peacefully in that empty bed. The morning sun streamed through Mabel's windows, casting long shadows across the nearly empty diner. Josie mechanically wiped down tables, her movements sluggish and heavy. The usual breakfast rush hadn't started yet, but the veterans' corner was already occupied. Walt sat with 5 other former servicemen, their coffee cups forming a tight circle as they spoke in low, determined voices. Josie tried to focus on her work, but fragments of their conversation drifted over. Not right. That poor boy. Gotta do something. Walt's chair scraped against the floor as he stood up. His weathered face was set with purpose as he approached Josie. The other veterans followed, forming a protective half-circle around her. "Listen here, Josie," Walt said, his voice gruff but gentle. "We've been talking it over, and we want you to know something." He straightened his shoulders, standing tall, like he must have done countless times in uniform. "If they think they're going to take Noah away from you, they'll have to go through us first." Josie's hands trembled on her cleaning cloth. "Walt? No, let me finish." Walt held up a calloused hand. "This town's made mistakes before. We've let good people down. Not this time." He looked back at his companions, who nodded firmly. "We're not letting anyone bully you or that boy." Tommy, the youngest of the veterans, stepped forward. "I've already called my cousin who works at the courthouse. She's helping us understand what kind of character statements they need. And my wife's organizing the church ladies," added Frank, another veteran. "They're pulling together everything they can remember about how you've helped folks around here." Mabel emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Already got the donation jar set up by the register. Every penny's going to help with your legal fees, honey." The bell above the door chimed as Pastor Lila walked in, carrying a thick folder. "Good morning, everyone. I've been up since dawn making calls." She placed the folder on the counter. "I've got 15 people ready to sign affidavits about your character, Josie, and that's just from my first round of calls." Josie's vision blurred with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Walt replied. "Just keep doing what you've always done, being there for that boy. Let us handle the rest." The door chimed again. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop hurried in, followed by 3 other shopkeepers from downtown. "We're having an emergency merchants association meeting," she announced. "Everyone agrees. We're organizing a fundraiser. My shop's already committed half of this week's sales." The diner was filling up now, not with the usual breakfast crowd, but with people arriving with purpose. Sarah from the library carried a stack of documents showing Noah's regular attendance at story time. Coach Martinez from the community center brought records of Maya and Noah's participation in youth programs. "The rally permit's already filed," Pastor Lila said, checking her phone. "The courthouse lawn this Saturday. Peaceful, respectful, but unmistakable. This community stands with you." Josie leaned against the counter, overwhelmed by the surge of support. Walt placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You've been pouring coffee and kindness into this town for years, girl. Now it's our turn to fill your cup." The veterans had spread out through the diner, each taking charge of different aspects. Tommy was coordinating with younger volunteers on social media strategy. Frank worked the phones, reaching out to more character witnesses. The diner had transformed into an impromptu command center of compassion. "We've got teams organized," Pastor Lila explained, showing Josie a carefully structured list. child care for volunteers, food for the rally, transportation for elderly supporters who want to attend. Everything's covered. Mrs. Peterson, who ran the bakery down the street, bustled in with boxes of fresh muffins. "First batch for the bake sale," she declared. "Every penny goes to the legal fund. I'll be baking around the clock." The door chimed yet again. This time it was Mr. Rodriguez, the retired high school principal. "I've got 30 years of experience with children and families," he said. "I'm happy to testify about what makes a good home. And it's not money or status, it's love and stability. That's what you give Noah." Mabel started brewing fresh pots of coffee as more people arrived. The usual morning routine had given way to something extraordinary, a community transforming itself into a fortress of support around one of its own. "Remember Elena?" Walt said quietly to the group. "We failed her once. We won't fail her son now." The veterans nodded solemnly. They had seen too many battles, but this was one fight they had chosen for themselves. Not for territory or politics, but for a family that belonged together. Miss Jenny from Noah's school arrived with a thick envelope. "I've got documentation of every parent-teacher conference Josie attended, every school event she participated in, every time she volunteered, plus photos of Noah's progress in class. The judge needs to see how he's thriving." The morning sun climbed higher as Pine Hollow mobilized. Church volunteers coordinated with veterans, shopkeepers collaborated with teachers, and neighbors reached out to neighbors. The rally plans grew more organized by the hour, with committees forming to handle every detail. Through it all, Josie kept trying to serve coffee, but her customers wouldn't let her. "You sit down," Mabel insisted, guiding her to a booth. "Let us take care of things for a change." Walt supervised the growing operation from his usual spot by the counter, his military experience showing in how efficiently he helped organize the community's response. "This is how a town should work," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "coming together when one of our own needs us." Josie watched as her daily workplace transformed into the heart of something much bigger than herself. The diner had always been a gathering place, but now it was becoming a symbol of what community really meant, not just sharing meals, but sharing burdens, sharing hope, and sharing the fight for what was right. The donation jar by the register began to fill with bills and checks. Sign-up sheets for rally volunteers covered an entire table. The stack of affidavits grew higher as more neighbors arrived to share their stories of Josie's kindness and Noah's place in the community. "This is just the beginning," Pastor Lila assured Josie, squeezing her hand. "Pine Hollow takes care of its own. And you and Noah? You're ours." The glass-walled boardroom on the 42nd floor of Vail Technologies towered over downtown Charlotte. Lucas sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his tie loosened slightly, facing 12 stern faces. Morning sun glinted off their water glasses, casting dancing reflections on the walls. "This is a PR nightmare waiting to happen." Bernard Matthews, the eldest board member, jabbed his finger at a tablet displaying social media posts about Lucas. "A billionaire CEO playing small-town father? The markets are already jittery. The stock has dropped 3 points since these rumors started circulating," Sarah Chen, the CFO, added quietly. She slid a graph across the table. "Our shareholders are concerned about your involvement in Pine Hollow." Lucas picked up the graph, studying it with the same intensity he'd used to build this company. The red downward line seemed to mock him, but all he could think about was Noah's empty bedroom. "We've drafted a statement," Jeffrey Parker, head of PR, interjected. "You'll announce a temporary leave of absence, citing personal reasons. It's the cleanest way to—" "No." Lucas's voice was soft but firm. "I beg your pardon." Bernard's eyebrows shot up. "I said no." Lucas placed both hands flat on the table, looking each board member in the eye. "I've spent 15 years building this company. Not for profit margins, though we've certainly made those, but to create technology that helps people, real people, in real places, like Pine Hollow." "Lucas," Diana spoke up from her seat near the door, her legal pad covered in neat notes. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately first." "There's nothing to discuss." Lucas stood, his chair rolling back. "You're all worried about optics? Let me tell you about optics. Right now, in a small town that most of you have never heard of, a little boy is staying with a stranger because the system says his loving foster mother isn't good enough. A woman who works double shifts, studies nursing, and still finds time to make every single person who walks into her diner feel like they matter. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Bernard opened his mouth to interrupt, but Lucas held up his hand. "You want me to abandon them? To protect our stock price?" He shook his head. "That's not leadership. That's cowardice." "This isn't about morality," Sarah argued. "It's about fiduciary responsibility. Your personal life is affecting shareholder value." Lucas picked up the graph again, this time crumpling it into a ball. "You know what affects value? Losing our soul. If keeping my seat means abandoning a child and the woman who's raising him, I'd rather lose." "Are you threatening to resign?" Bernard's face reddened. "No." Lucas straightened his tie. "I'm telling you that this company's mission has always been about improving lives. If we've forgotten that, maybe we're the ones who need to resign." The room fell silent. Outside the window, a flock of birds wheeled past, their shadows briefly darkening the room. "I have contacts at several major news outlets." Jeffrey tried again. "We can spin this." "We're done spinning," Lucas cut him off. "Done hiding. Done pretending that success means turning our backs on people who need help." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo of Noah and Maya building their Lego castle. "This is what matters. Not our stock price. Not our image. People." Diana watched him with a mixture of pride and concern. She'd never seen him like this, so certain, so unmovable. "The board could force a vote," Bernard threatened, his jowls quivering. "Remove you as CEO." Lucas smiled, but there was steel in it. "You could, but before you do, remember who holds controlling interest. Remember who built this company from nothing. And remember that every single one of our major innovations came because we were willing to take risks for what's right." He walked to the window, looking out over the city sprawling below. "I've made mistakes in my life, big ones. Played it safe when I should have been brave. Let fear of loss keep me from loving." He turned back to face them. "Not anymore." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Several board members exchanged glances, some uncertain, others angry. Lucas pressed a button on the intercom. "Sandra, would you bring in the folders from my office? The ones marked Community Initiative?" Minutes later, his assistant distributed thick blue folders to each board member. "Inside, you'll find our new rural development program, job training centers, educational partnerships, small business incubators. Starting with Pine Hollow, but expanding to similar communities across the country." Lucas's voice grew stronger with each word. "This isn't a distraction from our mission. This is our mission." Bernard flipped through the folder, his frown deepening. "The cost projections are completely feasible within our current budget." Lucas finished. "I've already had accounting run the numbers 3 times. He returned to his seat, leaning forward. "We can be the company that runs away when things get complicated, or we can be the company that stands up and makes a difference. Your choice." The silence stretched out. Finally, Sarah spoke. "I'd like to review these proposals in detail before making any decisions." Others nodded in agreement. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. "Meeting adjourned," Lucas announced. As the board members filed out, some avoiding his eyes, others looking thoughtful, he caught Diana's attention. When they were alone, he pulled out his phone again. "Get our legal team on Josie's case. Every penny. Every hour." Diana raised an eyebrow. "The board won't like that." "The board doesn't have to like it." Lucas's voice was firm. "They just have to understand that this is who we are now. Who I am now." Diana nodded, already making notes on her phone. "I'll make the calls right away." The morning air held an autumn chill as people began gathering on the courthouse lawn. Dew sparkled on the grass, and the sun cast long shadows through the old oak trees that lined the square. Walt, wearing his veteran's cap adorned with service pins, carefully positioned folding chairs in neat rows, while Mabel directed volunteers setting up a small podium. Handmade signs bobbed gently in the breeze. "Family is a verb. Justice for Josie, Noah. Love makes a home. The messages were written in bright colors, decorated with children's drawings of hearts and stick-figure families holding hands. Maya had spent hours the night before, hunched over her kitchen table, making sure each letter was perfect on her own sign. My brother belongs with us. Pastor Lila moved through the growing crowd, speaking quietly with each person, reminding them of their purpose. This is about dignity and truth, she said, touching shoulders and clasping hands. We're here to stand with love, not anger. The diner regulars came in their work clothes, mechanics in oil-stained coveralls, teachers with grade books tucked under their arms, nurses still in scrubs from night shift. They brought thermoses of coffee and boxes of Mabel's muffins to share. The veterans formed a quiet line near the courthouse steps, medals glinting on their jackets. Josie stood slightly apart, wringing her hands. Her uniform was pressed clean, her name tag still pinned to her collar. She'd come straight from opening the diner. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her spine was straight, her chin lifted. Lucas stood nearby, close enough to support, but far enough to respect the space she needed. "I didn't expect so many people," Josie whispered, watching as more townspeople arrived. The courthouse square was filling up with faces she knew from years of pouring coffee and remembering orders: the high school principal, the hardware store owner, the librarian who always ordered Earl Grey with honey. "You've touched more lives than you know," Lucas replied softly. He wanted to reach for her hand, but held back, conscious of the eyes watching them. Walt approached the podium, tapping the microphone. The gentle murmur of conversation faded as people found places to sit or stand. "Folks," he began, his voice steady and clear, "we're here today because family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up day after day. It's about who makes the lunches, checks the homework, kisses the scrapped knees." He gestured toward Josie. "I've watched this young woman raise 2 children with more grace and strength than most folks could imagine. She works doubles to keep food on the table, studies nursing between shifts, and still finds time to help anyone who needs it." Mabel stepped up next, her gray hair neat under her diner cap. "I knew Elena Cruz," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "She cleaned houses in this town, including mine. We failed her when she needed help, looked the other way, kept quiet when we should have spoken up." She paused, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "But Josie?" Josie gave Elena's son everything his mama dreamed of: safety, education, dignity, love. One by one, people came forward to speak. The kindergarten teacher described how Josie never missed a parent conference, even if it meant swapping shifts. The grocery store manager told about the time Josie helped an elderly customer home in the rain, carrying his bags 6 blocks out of her way. Across the street, partially hidden in the shadow of an elm tree, Arturo Cruz watched. His lawyer had advised against attending, warning it might complicate their case. But something had drawn him here, perhaps the same stubbornness that had driven him to file for custody in the first place. He listened as the high school counselor spoke about Maya's improved grades since Josie took her in, about Noah's bright curiosity in his reading group. The pharmacist described how Josie always picked up Elena's prescriptions in her final months, paying out of pocket when insurance failed. Arturo's hands clenched in his pockets as he remembered Elena's last visit home, their bitter argument about her choices. He'd been so certain about right and wrong then, about proper families and respectability. Now, watching these people rally around Josie and the children, his certainty wavered. Pastor Lila's voice carried across the square. "We're not here to judge anyone's choices or past mistakes. We're here because a little boy needs stability, needs the love he's known since his mama left this world. We're here because sometimes family is built through daily acts of courage and kindness." The morning sun climbed higher, warming the autumn air. More people arrived: parents from Noah's school, customers from the diner, elderly couples who lived along Josie's paper route from her teenage years. They brought camp chairs and blankets, thermoses and snacks, settling in for however long it took to make their presence felt. Walt returned to the podium, his voice gentler now. "Some folks might look at our town and see something small, something simple, but we know better. We know that real family, real community isn't about fancy houses or big bank accounts. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to love, day after day. From his position across the street, Arturo watched as Josie wiped tears from her cheeks. Lucas stood near her, not touching, just present. Like he'd been every morning at the diner, Arturo had learned. Not pushing, not claiming, just showing up faithfully. The crowd had swelled to fill the courthouse square. Signs swayed gently. Love makes a family. Noah needs his home. Stand with Josie. But there was no shouting, no anger, just the steady presence of a community saying, "This matters. This child matters. This family matters." Arturo shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the emotion tightening his throat. He'd come to town, certain of his rights, as Noah's grandfather, burning with old resentments and new suspicions about the rich man suddenly involved in his grandson's life. But watching these people testify to Josie's character, to the home she'd built for Noah, he felt his certainty crack like old paint in the sun. The hardware store owner was speaking now, describing how Josie had helped his wife through chemotherapy, watching their kid so he could take her to treatments. The librarian told about Noah's weekly visits, how he'd proudly gotten his first library card, how Josie read to him every night despite her exhaustion. Each story built on the last, painting a picture of a woman who had taken his daughter's child and given him everything Elena had wished for him, everything Arturo himself had failed to give Elena in his rigid adherence to his own ideas of family. The courtroom felt cavernous, its high wooden ceiling and austere walls amplifying every whisper and shuffled paper. Morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long rectangles across the worn carpet. Josie sat at the defendant's table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to keep them from trembling. Lucas sat directly behind her, close enough that she could feel his steady presence. Arturo Cruz occupied the plaintiff's chair, his weathered face set in stern lines. His expensive suit looked stiff and uncomfortable on his carpenter's frame. His attorney, Mr. S.E. Patterson, stood at the podium, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. "Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about blood ties and legitimate family connections," Patterson declared, gesturing toward his client. "Mr. Cruz is Noah's biological grandfather. He shares DNA with the child. Ms. Rivera, while undoubtedly well-meaning, has no legal or biological claim to Noah beyond a temporary fostering arrangement." Judge Martinez, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind reading glasses, listened intently as Patterson continued. "Furthermore, Mr. Cruz can provide stability, structure, and cultural connection to Noah's Hispanic heritage. He owns his own woodworking business, has a 3-bedroom home in Charlotte, and can ensure Noah grows up knowing his mother's family history." Josie's attorney, Sarah Chen, rose next. Her simple navy suit contrasted with Patterson's designer wear, but her voice rang with quiet conviction. "Your Honor, family isn't defined solely by DNA. Ms. Rivera has been Noah's primary caregiver for the past 3 years. She's provided not just shelter and food, but love, emotional security, and a stable home environment." Chen spread several documents on the podium. "We have testimonials from Noah's teachers, his pediatrician, and community members attesting to Ms. Rivera's exceptional care. Noah is thriving under her guardianship. He's reading above grade level, participates in community activities, and has formed strong bonds with his foster sister Maya and their extended support network." Arturo shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. When it was his turn to speak, his voice carried the rough edge of someone unused to public speaking. "I lost my daughter Elena," he said, emotion making his accent thicker. "I cannot lose my grandson too, Ms. Rivera." He paused, struggling. "She is not family. She cannot teach Noah about his mother, about where he comes from." Josie fought back tears as Arturo continued. "I made mistakes with Elena. I was too strict, too traditional. When she left home pregnant, His voice cracked. "I should have helped her. Now I must make things right with Noah." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Cruz, why did you wait 3 years to seek custody?" Arturo's shoulders slumped. "I was angry, ashamed. Then I saw on internet that rich man was trying to take Noah, I thought." He shook his head. "I thought history repeating. Poor Hispanic woman being pushed aside by wealthy white man." Lucas stiffened in his seat. Josie wanted to reach back and squeeze his hand, knowing how those words must hurt him. The morning proceeded with witness after witness. Noah's teacher spoke about his progress in school. Pastor Lila testified about Josie's dedication to both children's spiritual and emotional growth. Walt described how Josie worked extra shifts to buy Noah's asthma medicine when insurance denied the claim. Then Diana Hale approached the stand. Her designer heels clicked against the floor, her perfectly tailored suit a contrast to her unusually uncertain expression. After being sworn in, she surprised everyone by not waiting for questions. "Your Honor, I need to make a statement," she said, her professional facade cracking slightly. "For years, I've been the person who makes problems disappear for wealthy clients. I've spun narratives, buried inconvenient truths, all in the name of protecting corporate interests." The courtroom grew absolutely still. Lucas leaned forward, his eyes wide with surprise. "When Mr. Vale first became involved with Noah and Ms. Rivera, I advised him to distance himself to protect his image. I suggested ways to minimize his connection to Pine Hollow." Diana's voice grew stronger. "I was wrong, dead wrong. I watched as Lucas Vale, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, chose to become a better man instead of a safer one." She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. "I have here documentation of every philanthropic initiative Mr. Vale has quietly funded in Pine Hollow over the past months. Job training programs, scholarship funds, healthcare accessibility projects. Not for publicity, there wasn't any. He did it because he saw real people struggling and chose to help." Diana turned to face Arturo directly. "You're afraid Noah will lose his heritage, his connection to Elena. But I've watched Josie Rivera teach Noah to be proud of who he is. I've seen her ask Elena's friends about recipes so Noah can taste his mother's favorite foods. I've witnessed her struggle to learn Spanish lullabies so Noah won't forget his first language." Her voice softened. "And I've watched Lucas Vale, this supposedly privileged billionaire, sit for hours with Noah, looking at Elena's photos, helping him understand where he comes from. They're not erasing Noah's past. They're honoring it while building his future." She placed the folder on the judge's desk. "These records show more than charitable giving. They show a man and a woman who have put Noah's needs above their own convenience, their public image, and yes, above blood ties. They show what real family looks like." The silence in the courtroom felt heavy with the weight of truth finally spoken aloud. Josie dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, and even Arturo looked shaken. Judge Martinez began carefully examining the documents Diana had submitted, her expression thoughtful as she turned each page. For the first time since the hearing began, hope flickered in Josie's heart. Not because of the legal arguments or the documented evidence, but because finally the whole truth was being told. About love that went deeper than DNA, about family that was chosen every single day, and about the quiet ways people could change when they opened their hearts to what really mattered. The judge's chamber's door clicked shut, leaving the courtroom in tense silence. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, dust motes dancing in the golden beams. Josie remained at the defendant's table, her shoulders straight despite her exhaustion. Lucas hadn't moved from his spot directly behind her, his presence steady and unwavering. Arturo Cruz shifted in his chair, his hand moving to the inner pocket of his suit jacket. His fingers brushed against the worn edge of an envelope he'd carried for days, weighing him down like stones in his pockets. The paper had yellowed slightly at the corners, and Elena's familiar handwriting graced the front, the same careful script she'd inherited from her mother. His attorney, Mr. Patterson, leaned over to whisper something, but Arturo barely heard him. The old carpenter's eyes were fixed on Josie, watching as she dabbed at tears with a tissue Pastor Lila had pressed into her hand. She looked so much like Elena in that moment, the same quiet dignity, the same stubborn hope. Walt and the other veterans sat in the gallery, their presence like a protective wall. Mabel from the diner had closed up shop to be here, her usually cheerful face creased with worry. The whole town seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. Arturo's fingers tightened around the letter. Pride warred with truth in his chest, a battle that had begun the moment he'd found this envelope while going through Elena's old keepsakes. He'd read it alone in his workshop, surrounded by half-finished furniture and the scent of sawdust, and the words had burned into his heart. He glanced at his lawyer again, who was reviewing notes with a confident air. They had a strong case on paper: blood ties, financial stability, cultural heritage. But Elena's words echoed in his mind, cutting through his certainty like a sharp chisel through wood. Diana, Lucas's attorney, caught his eye from across the aisle. Something in her expression, professional yet deeply human, reminded him of the rally on the courthouse lawn. All those people, standing up for love over law, for chosen family over blood. He'd watched from across the street, hearing story after story of Josie's quiet strength, her endless capacity for care. The weight of the letter seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. Arturo thought of his own stubbornness, how it had cost him his relationship with Elena. How she'd tried to bridge that gap, sending him photos of Noah that he'd been too proud to acknowledge. Now here he was, about to make the same mistake again, letting his pride overshadow what was right. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out the envelope. Mr. Patterson noticed and frowned, reaching out to stop him, but Arturo shook his head. The attorney's whispered protest faded into background noise as Arturo stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "Your Honor," he called out, his voice rough with emotion, "before you make your decision, there's something you need to see." The bailiff stepped forward, but the judge had already emerged from chambers, sensing the shift in the courtroom's atmosphere. Arturo held up the letter with work-worn hands. "This is from my daughter Elena," he said, his voice catching on her name. "I found it when I was going through her things. I didn't want to show it because—" he paused, swallowing hard. "Because I knew what it would mean. But Elena deserves to be heard." Mr. Patterson stood, objecting, but Arturo continued, his voice growing stronger. "I've been holding on to anger and old ways of thinking for so long, I almost made the same mistake twice. I lost my daughter once because I couldn't accept her choices. I won't dishonor her memory by ignoring her wishes now." The judge nodded to the bailiff, who took the letter and brought it forward. The room held its collective breath as she opened the envelope and began to read Elena's words aloud. Each sentence seemed to fill the courtroom with Elena's presence, her voice speaking across time. When the bailiff reached the crucial lines, Josie's soft gasp broke the silence. "If I cannot be with Noah, let him be with Josie. And tell Lucas. He was the first man who made me feel safe." The letter trembled in the bailiff's hands as she finished reading. Josie had both hands pressed to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. Lucas sat completely still, his eyes closed, processing Elena's final message to him. In the gallery, Pastor Lila whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Arturo stood in the middle of it all, finally unburdened of the secret he'd carried. The truth was out now, sharp and clean like fresh-cut wood, ready to be shaped into something new. He looked at Josie, really looked at her, and saw what Elena had seen. A heart big enough to hold all the love Noah would ever need. The courthouse clock ticked steadily as Judge Margaret Wilson adjusted her reading glasses. The room fell into complete silence, every breath held, every heart pounding. Josie's hands trembled slightly in her lap, and she felt Lucas's steadying presence behind her. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, Judge Wilson began, her voice clear and measured, including character testimonies, community affidavits, and most significantly, the recently submitted letter from Elena Cruz. "This court has reached its decision." She paused, looking directly at each party in turn. Arturo sat rigid in his chair, his face a mask of contained emotion. His lawyer shuffled papers nervously beside him. "The court finds that the best interest of the minor child, Noah Cruz, lies in maintaining his current stable environment." Judge Wilson's words carried through the hushed courtroom. "Therefore, full legal and physical custody shall remain with Ms. Josie Rivera." A soft collective exhale swept through the room. Josie pressed her hands to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Behind her, Lucas squeezed her shoulder gently. "However," the judge continued, raising her hand to quiet the murmurs, "this court also recognizes the importance of family connections and heritage. Mr. Arturo Cruz, as Noah's biological grandfather, shall be granted supervised visitation rights. Arturo's shoulders slumped slightly, a mix of relief and resignation crossing his weathered features. These visitations will be contingent upon Mr. Breaking's Cruz's completion of cultural sensitivity and reconciliation counseling through Pastor Lila Martinez's program at Pine Hollow Community Church. Judge Wilson looked sternly over her glasses. The court suggests 8 weekly sessions to start, with progress reviews to determine the transition to unsupervised visits. She shuffled her papers, then addressed the room more personally. I want to acknowledge something unusual about this case. We've seen a community come together, not just for one child, but for the principle of what makes a family. Blood ties are precious, yes, but so are the bonds we choose to forge and maintain. The judge turned her attention to Josie. Ms. Rivera, your dedication to Noah's well-being, your pursuit of education while working full-time, and your grace under pressure speak volumes. The court commends your commitment to keeping Noah connected to his heritage while providing him with a loving, stable home. Josie wiped tears from her cheeks, nodding gratefully. Mr. Cruz, the judge continued, addressing Arturo directly. Your decision to share Elena's letter, knowing it might weaken your case, shows integrity. That same integrity will serve you well as you build a relationship with your grandson. Arturo's eyes glistened as he gave a single, dignified nod. And, Mr. Vale, she said, looking at Lucas, your willingness to support this family, regardless of biological connections, demonstrates the kind of character this court hopes to see more often. The judge picked up her gavel. The temporary placement order is hereby dissolved. Noah Cruz shall return to Ms. Rivera's custody immediately. She struck the gavel once, the sound sharp and definitive. Court is adjourned. The room erupted in movement. Pastor Lila appeared at the courtroom door, holding Noah's hand. The boy's eyes darted around the room, searching. Mama? His small voice carried over the noise. Noah, Josie called out, rising from her chair. Noah broke free from Pastor Lila's gentle grip and raced across the courtroom floor, his sneakers squeaking on the polished wood. He launched himself into Josie's waiting arms, and she caught him, lifting him up and holding him close. His arms wrapped tight around her neck as she swayed back and forth, both of them crying and laughing at once. I missed you so much, baby, Josie whispered into his hair. So much. Lucas stepped closer, placing one hand on Noah's back and the other finding Josie's free hand. He threaded his fingers through hers and squeezed gently. We keep coming back, he said softly, his voice rough with emotion. The morning sun painted Pine Hollow in shades of gold, as Mayor Thompson cut the bright red ribbon stretched across the entrance of the Elena Cruz Learning Center. Applause rippled through the gathered crowd, and Josie squeezed Noah's hand, feeling tears well up in her eyes. The building itself wasn't fancy, just the old community center, renovated with fresh paint, new windows, and updated facilities. But what made it special was what it represented. The sign above the door featured Elena's photograph, her gentle smile watching over all who entered. This center, Lucas addressed the crowd from the podium, his voice warm and steady, represents more than just a building. It's a promise to our community, a promise that everyone deserves a chance to learn, to grow, and to build a better future. Arturo stood near the entrance, his weathered hands clasped in front of him. He'd spent weeks setting up the woodworking workshop, arranging tools with precision, preparing to teach others the craft that had sustained him through his hardest days. The walls of his classroom already displayed several pieces, including a small rocking chair he'd made for Noah. Inside, Walt led tours through the veteran-run apprenticeship center. His voice carried with pride as he showed off the new equipment and training areas. We've already got 20 local businesses signed up to partner with our graduates, he explained to a group of interested youth. This isn't just about learning a trade, it's about building community. Maya darted between the rooms, showing off the new computer lab where she would help teach basic coding classes on weekends. At 13, she'd recently won the regional chess championship, and now she was eager to share her love of learning with others. Mabel wandered through the daycare area, nodding approvingly at the bright, clean space. Elena would have loved this, she said softly, touching the wall where children's artwork already hung. A safe place for working parents to leave their little ones while they study or train. The scholarship office buzzed with activity as Diana, who'd left her corporate law practice to run the center's legal aid program, helped the first round of applicants fill out paperwork. Service workers, single parents, and veterans get priority, she explained, her designer suits replaced by casual business wear. We're especially focused on helping those facing discriminatory barriers. Pastor Lila blessed each room, pausing to pray in the small chapel space that would be open to all faiths. The walls held quotes about hope and perseverance, including Elena's words from her letter. Even in our darkest moments, love finds a way to light the path forward. In the main hall, photographs told the story of Pine Hollow's journey. The diner, the Veterans Center, the courthouse rally, and countless small moments of community coming together. Among them was a simple snapshot of Lucas at his usual booth, Noah building with Legos beside him, and Josie pouring coffee with a smile. As the afternoon wore on, people gathered in small groups, sharing stories and plans. Arturo showed Noah how to sand wood properly, their heads bent together over a workbench. The old man's eyes crinkled with joy as his grandson absorbed every word of instruction. "See how you follow the grain?" Arturo demonstrated, his voice gentle. "Just like life. Sometimes you have to learn which way things naturally flow." Walt's coffee group had claimed a corner table, their usual morning meetup relocated to christen the center's small cafe. They raised their mugs in a toast to new beginnings, their faces reflecting decades of hard-won wisdom and hope for the future. Later, as the sun began to set, Josie found herself standing in the quiet entryway. She traced Elena's name on the dedication plaque, remembering her friend's dreams for her son. "We did it," she whispered. "We built something beautiful from the broken pieces." The next morning arrived crisp and clear. Pine Hollow stirred to life as it always did. Delivery trucks rumbling down Main Street, shop owners unlocking their doors, early risers heading to Mabel's for their first cup of coffee. At precisely 7:10 a.m., Lucas stepped into the diner, the bell chiming his arrival. Noah looked up from his seat in their usual booth, his face brightening. Maya sat beside him, helping him sound out words in a new picture book. "Good morning, my loves," Josie said, already moving toward them with the coffee pot. Her engagement ring caught the morning light, sparkling like the river visible through the window. Lucas slid into his spot, accepting his usual mug with a smile that hadn't faded since that first day. Noah wiggled closer to him, holding up his book proudly. "Listen to what I can read now," he announced, pointing to the words carefully. His finger moved across the page as he read aloud. "Family means we keep coming back." Josie set down the coffee pot, her heart full as she watched her little family together in their morning ritual. Outside, the river sparkled under the rising sun, its steady flow a reminder of how far they'd come. Inside, laughter warmed the air like the steam rising from fresh coffee, and love filled every corner of their world. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Josie Rivera, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.